And welcome. This is Houston Newsmakers Extra. Delighted to be joined by Professor Angela Holder, HCC, and curator of the Logan, we call it the Camp Logan Mutiny. Yes, Camp Logan. Some people call it the Camp Logan riots.
Yes, sir.
P.J. Matthews, Captain Matthews, is the founder of the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
This is the 100th anniversary of that riot, and I was talking with you off camera about your uncle.
Yes, sir.
Was hanged as a result of that mutiny, if you will. What happened?
Well, that particular night, the men were upset. One of their friends, who was a very well-respected soldier, had been physically assaulted by a police officer earlier in the day. And he was only assaulted when he inquired about the first assault of another soldier who came to the assistance of a woman who was being dragged out of her house half dressed by HPD officers. At that time, women coming out in their underwear was like being naked. Mm-hmm. And the soldier was trying to defend her honor, and he was beaten by police and put into jail.
And this was 100 years ago. He was a soldier. Was he a soldier in uniform at that time?
Yes, sir, he was a soldier in uniform.
Inquiring of an HPD officer about something, yes, and the HPD officer then assaulted him?
Yes, sir, he did.
As a result of, and it was because what? He had the nerve to address him?
Yes, he did. He inquired as to why the woman was being arrested, and if so, he could pay her fine to allow her to have her dignity. And he was physically assaulted and put in jail. You
know, that says something about how our city was 100 years ago, does it not?
Yes, it does.
We talk about race now, and I know that throughout the generations, African-American soldiers have had to go through some of those things, have they not?
Right. I mean, this is typical of a Jim Crow era in the U.S. So, and these soldiers were not used to that type of treatment. We were in a southern town, and the Houston police pride themselves on enforcing Jim Crow laws. And so this was a big part of the problem that was created.
And as a result of that interaction with the HPD officer and this other soldier, he came back to the camp after he was beaten up. What happened that led to the mutiny?
There were two soldiers. The first was beaten so severely he had to stay in jail overnight. But the second soldier, Corporal Baltimore, was brought back to camp with the understanding that he was to make things good, to try to calm the men down. But here, the men were pretty upset because they had been enduring little instances of police brutality throughout their time that they had been there, and this was pretty much the end all. This was it. They just couldn't take any more.
So there was an actual mutiny then. These men grabbed weapons and whatnot. That was a part of it.
Yeah, it was a mutiny. They locked and loaded their weapons. They marched down West Gray, West Dallas, to what we call now 4th Ward. At the time, it was called the San Felipe District. And in between those 2 points, they killed 15 people, 5 of them being police officers.
So in some respects, justice being what it is, you kill people like that, then perhaps the justice is that they would be arrested and charged or whatnot, but it's what precipitated it all, which made it worse.
Yeah, because mutiny in a time of war is punishable by death. I mean, we know that.
Right.
It's in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. What we have an issue with is you have 63 defendants and 1 defense attorney. You got 63 defendants found guilty, no opportunity for an appeal. So these are the kinds of things that we have an issue with, and the kind of things that we bring up at the exhibit.
So in addition to the exhibit now celebrating 100 years, there are going to be events going on every day next week, pretty much, at the Buffalo Soldiers Museum. What kind of things would you want people to take away from that experience next week?
Well, I would like for them to come out and to understand that racism is something that we cannot allow in society. You cannot say I'm better than you based on something over which you have no control, which is skin color. And so when you endure abuse based on that, you're going to explode. And provocations notwithstanding, it's just something that you just don't do.
This whole process, now 19 men were hanged, including your uncle, correct?
19 total.
And there were other men who were sentenced to life. Did they have to serve life, or did they get out early, or do we know what happened with them?
Yes, some of the men were allowed to leave early. If they were the ones who testified against the others, they might have done 2 to 2.5 years in the barracks that was the disciplinary barracks at Fort Leavenworth. So there were about 10 of those guys that got immunity for testifying against the others.
Well, I'm looking forward to this, Captain Matthews. I know that this is something very much a point of pride for you. you for everything that has to do with the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum. This has been your baby for a long time. What do you hope people will come away from when they leave after they've taken part in some of the events next week? An
appreciation of history, so that we learn from our past, so that if we can take this in, identify what was going on, and then have a relationship to what's going on now.
This whole thing, by the way, Camp Logan was an area near what is now Memorial Park?
Yes.
So our history is right here.
Yes, it is.
There's much more we can find out. So it's all going to be at the Buffalo Soldiers National Museum from Monday through Saturday. Every day there's going to be something. And if you want to find information about it, the number is 713-942-8920. Museum, by the way, is at 3816 Caroline Street, right there in the museum district, as it should be. Camp Logan, 100 years later. Thank you so much. You can get more information at www.buffalosoldiersmuseum.com.
Thank you.
Thank you
for coming in. Appreciate it. Thank you for this Newsmakers Extra.